Hello, I'm Philip Stoten. I'm here on the SCOOPstudio at Productronica 2017. I'm joined by two young gentlemen from the PCB industry to talk about trends and technologies in the industry. Martin Cotton from Ventec and Michael Weinhold from EIPC. Let's start with you, Michael. You've been in the industry for a few years. What's new now, and what's really challenging the industry? Is it still miniaturization, or what is it that's keeping people awake at night now?
Well, today it is digitalization, We went from analog, making printed circuit boards using analog technology, now to digital technology. And everything what is not digital will not have a future in making printed circuit boards. That's maybe plating is still analog. But all the other parts, imaging, drilling, everything has to be digital in the future.
Okay, that's really interesting, because when I think back to my time in PCBs, everything was very, very analog, and actually one of the problems that the SMT industry has as well is there's still a lot of analog process, screen printing, there's the expert there that knows how to get it right. That doesn't work when you change shifts and all that kind of thing. Do you see that trend as well in terms of PCB manufacturing, Martin?
I would say yes, I do. One of my things with PCB manufacturing in general is I don't think they're very adept at change.
Okay.
And I think they hang on to technologies just too long.
Yeah.
And they go past the point where they cannot retrieve good quality processes from those old systems or old ideas.
Yeah.
And I think they printed circuit industry in general is quite happy to invest $1 million in something that does this much improvement, but won't invest $20,000 for this much improvement, because it's an unknown. And I think that's been historically the way that's happened. I mean, I look at it now and I visit not only OEMs but PCB shops as part of my job, and guys, you can see what they get enthused about, and it's such microscopically small improvements, and they like to spend a lot of money on it, but they won't spend a little amount of money on a giant leap.
Yeah, so they want to incrementally improve old processes, and maybe those processes don't have digital potential and are going out of date. What makes them change their mind? Is it pressure from OEMs? Is it pressure from the market? Is it price? What's driving them to actually think about this? Because the PCB industry it's a tough market.
Well, the major driver today is cost, and that is basically overall cost, although many people have not understood it completely. But people think in time to market, it's delivery time. Everything what is more than 2 weeks delivery time is made in Asia because it's cheaper, including transport. So the European industry has to stay within a manufacturing time within less than 2 weeks, including shipping and job clarification, everything. And if they want to be in the fast turnaround business, it must be 2 or 3 days, including shipping. And this is the big challenge. And as long as people involved, the risk for making defects is too high. So it must go digital, and machine must talk to machine. The design data must talk to the drill machine, the design data must talk to the imaging machines, to the processors, and even to the plating line on the end of the day. But what is driving are the components. And printed circuit board have boiled down to become a component, an off-the-shelf component. Although it's a designed component, it's one of the most complex components, and it's tailored to one specific job for one specific unit. The components can be made on different units, and that's what the challenge is. So the PCB manufacturer have to be very flexible to meet the needs of their customers by delivery time, which is one, and then comes cost. And when it comes to quantity, it is cost first, and then delivery time.
Yeah. Over here in the assembly halls, everybody's been talking about Industry 4.0 for a long, long time. This is probably the third Productronica, the debate's been going on, but there's a lot happening. There are real solutions, some based on domain expertise in particular areas, and some based on a more holistic solution. Where's the PCB industry in that process? Are we even at Industry 3.0 yet, or are we trending towards that? And if we're not, does it have to start with that data? Does it have to start with a designer?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, one of the things in Europe, which is slightly different from the rest of the world, is that they have major OEMs who commit to something like this. Like some well-known German companies who literally drive this because they pick up on these ideas like Industry 4 or IoT, etc., and they push it. They see it not as just a benefit for themselves, but it benefits the whole industry. And the more people you have doing it, the easier it becomes to get your supply base associated with it. And if your supply base, whether it's laminates or components, if that's not aligned with it, then you don't have a future in these things. And that to me is something which is so different in Germany, for example, and Europe to US. US talks about this thing a lot, and it does look at this. And I know certain bodies, I'm associated with a lot of these different bodies in the US, and they have all sorts of factions within them, but they're still doing the old stuff. They don't like actually moving on to the newer stuff. Because as long as they are correcting a problem, they're all employed.
Well, it's curious, and change is scary. We all know change is scary, but change is coming, and if you don't change, someone else is going to eat your lunch because they've done that. Just switching tact a little bit on the laminate side. What's driving your technology roadmap? What technologies, in terms of what the PCB manufacturers and the PCBs are used for, is giving you a headache over in China?
Well, the key thing for us is, I've only been in the laminate business for 3.5 years, so I'm a newbie. Okay. I could hardly spell resin a little while ago, but I can tell you that immediately people like myself, coming from a design and OEM background, are having an effect inside Ventec, and I can't speak for all laminators, but it's having an effect because I'm able to bring influence to their development. Okay. In fact, one of our materials, I won't talk about it specifically right now, but one of our materials is really very advanced, very low loss. It's lower loss than just about all the rest of the industry, but we're not known for that. And the reason we've got this particular format is because it's a design-led philosophy. It's not a manufacturing-led philosophy. So we're looking at making certain the track widths are getting wider, not narrower. Okay? Because yes, of course, they subjective. If you look at all roadmaps, they kind of go down anyway, but trying to hold a 50 micron line of space and not drop to a 30 micron where the trace resistance is so bloody high, it makes a mockery of low DF, for example. So you've got to try and change some of the geometry of these laminates and boards, and the way to do that is change some of the thinking behind them, and not do what just one segment of the whole product chain wants. You have to look at it from a different, and possibly, I like your word earlier, holistic viewpoint.
Yeah, I think that holistic viewpoint is really important, and as we were speaking about the digitization, part of that has caused a shift in the equipment manufacturing and software manufacturing market in assembly, where we're seeing much more communication, not just between machines, but between companies. Much more collaboration, openness, the willingness to share standards. Is that happening in the bareboard market, and how's that progressing?
We have to understand that the PCB market, or the printed wiring board market, have moved from a national market to a European market, and today is a global market. So companies in Europe or Germany have to use the same material as companies in China. When it comes to qualification, they have to be qualified according to the same regulation. They have to meet the same rules. And when it comes to developing new technology, designers have to be involved from first stage on. The designers, by wise decisions, impact more than 70% of the cost of a piece of electronics, while the assembly process and the board manufacturing process only influence 30%. So even if you make a 10% savings on the 30%, or when it comes to the printed circuit board represents only 5% of the assembled group, and you make a 20% saving, that this is nothing. 20% saving on printed circuits was less than 1%. It doesn't really help the industry to reduce costs. Reducing costs can only be when designers understand how to change a design, and packaging is the major driver. We came from wafer level packaging, now we are going to panel level packaging. panel level packaging, we're using technology which the packaging industry for silicon package is using since last 20 years, and I was involved in many of these projects. But now it becomes the printed circuit board or printed wiring board fabricator has to use this technology to stay up to speed. And then cost reduction through miniaturization. This is the name of the game. And then reliability by embedding. And one of our members have just requested globally where he could get printed wiring boards with embedded components. And the only region which have replied was Europe, where capabilities for making this type of boards, where they can make it on a daily basis, while other regions of the world are not yet there. So, and we have to make sure that the benefits of this are integrated in the new designs for the benefit of the end user to improve reliability and reduce cost.
Yeah, and that increases the value add of the printed circuit board, which takes it out of component status, makes it subsystem status, and makes it more important. So I'd like to think this all comes back to good design, but also good communication. So it's communication between the designer and the OEM, and then making sure everything is in place in between. You started your career in design, you're in laminates, but you're still if we cut you in half, you're still going to be a PCB designer through that.
Yeah.
Is that how you see it?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, one of the things I really enjoy about my job is I end up being kind of an ambassador between the OEM and the PCB manufacturer.
Yeah.
And they've both got their viewpoints about what should be done, and I think printed circuit board layout guys, especially old boys like myself, we've been around the block a few times and we've probably made more than our fair share of mistakes along the road. And so you learn how to interact with either side, the OEM side or the PCB manufacturer side, in a more constructive way. Beforehand it's your fault, your problem. Now it's our problem. And how do we fix it? Yeah. And you know, my job is a global role, and I see different approaches, whether it's the US, Europe, or Asia, particularly say China. Each segment has a different approach. Like if you go to the US, you have these wonderful electronics-driven design, and yet they're still looking at very old-fashioned sort of printed circuit board technologies. And then you go to Asia, it's completely opposite. You know, they've got very advanced printed circuit board technology, but not so much on the electronic side. So you've got it's kind of a dichotomy that you don't necessarily truly understand unless you start to actually work with them, and then you feel I'm involved with this. How can I then contribute to that and solve the problem that we all have?
Yeah. And it's that collaboration to add value, and that's the importance of associations, that's the importance of having the design, the manufacturer, the OEM factions all together. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your time. Thanks for stopping by. Enjoy the rest of Productronica. Thank you.